Discussion in the interim, the Western Cape High Court halting the government's planned VAT increase after mounts of pressure from political parties and, of course, a number of civil society groups. The proposed hike, which is aimed at addressing a 75 billion rand revenue shortfall, has faced heavy criticism from its potential, for its potential burden, on low-income households. Let's continue taking stock of this for you now. Bring in now former Statistician-General Dr Pali Lehohla, who joins us now via our video link. And Dr. Lehohla, great to see you as always. Thanks very much indeed for making time to speak to us. You know, we spent the past couple of weeks listening to the debate, and from where I'm sitting, there are both extremes. There are people who are saying that the VAT and the focus on the VAT is a red herring, given just how big this budget has been. And of course, there are others who are suggesting that this is important enough to garner the kind of attention it has. Are you satisfied with the statistical transparency about the data we've seen over the past couple of days as this debate has raged on?
Nothing to do with the data. It had nothing to do with the evidence. It had to do with political machinations. First, the DA claims that it is pro-poor, yet it couldn't support NHI, nor would it support Bella Bill. Its stance against that is predicated on the fact that they didn't like anything to talk to about taxes, which would in the main be property tax, wealth tax, and income tax. That would impact on 83% of whites who actually are on the top quintile, on the fifth quintile. So that's what they are against. So talking against that is a right hand. The ANC, which pretends to be the protector of the poor, has impugned punishment by saying it wants that, because that would actually impact the poor, and the ANC says it wouldn't, and they say they would zero rate. Instead of looking at the comprehensive conditions of the black people, which amongst which is excessive consumption of protein and starch, which propels diseases, and therefore the need for NHI. So both parties, or contenders, primary contenders here, are fictitious in the way they want to drive or oppose that. Certainly that was going to affect the poor the most. It is good that it has been taken off. However, the devastation that the debate has caused, a storm in the teacup, augurs very badly for the country. It is a circus of the highest order. When they say put a clown in the palace, then the palace will be a circus, is what has played in South Africa over the last 2 months of a non-issue called VAT.
Sure.
And without any driving of evidence, the Treasury wanted to push for that for no good reason. If you want to go developmental, you don't talk tax, you talk what the role of the Reserve Bank and the Treasury should be in order to be a developmental state. All developmental states use the leverage from the Reserve Bank and the Treasury. Taxes, yes, are important. Taxes should not be wasted. We have seen a waste in South Africa, and the DA is correct in saying that there is too much leakage, and that has to be plugged.
Yeah.
But developmental states do not necessarily focus on tax, but focus on what the role of the macroeconomics, driven largely by Treasury and the Reserve Bank, become the biggest leverage, a leverage that has been ignored all along.
Yeah.
And therefore, the debate is misplaced anyway.
I hear you. In many instances, when any politician takes aim or at least addresses the Reserve Bank or Treasury, they're told that these institutions should be independent from any kind of interference from the executive, certainly from those sitting in the political benches.
Maybe they are independent from poverty. That's where we are. And therefore, whose policy are they serving? Whose purpose are they serving if they are independent of poverty? That's the question we must ask. That's the mandate. I mean, the Reserve Bank has the mandate to protect the currency as well as to deal with the economy and employment at the same time. But if that's the mandate, of the Reserve Bank and the mandate of the Treasury, then they have to be judged harshly on the question of unemployment that persists in South Africa. It looks like the unemployed and the poor are on their own. In a democracy that says the country belongs to them, I think these are the fundamental questions we must ask. Time to look at these neoliberal policies, especially in the light of people like Traore, showing that it can be done, not in 30 years or 31 years, but within 2 years. The living conditions and the hopes of the people of the Sahel have been raised by these individual military people who have said enough is enough of the people to slog under poverty when they have minerals. So South Africa has to really put a serious mirror in front of itself, having come last after so many of the African countries' experiments have dismally failed. It had to learn from that, but it looks like it has learned the bad lessons.
There may very well be an opportunity to start this process from scratch. I mean, in fact, I think it was the EFF who was basically saying that we need to go right back to the debate around the fiscal framework. You know, the finance minister needs to come and present a new plan before Parliament. Given the focus that you reckon we should place now and the current economic indicators, what ought to be the approach if, in fact, this process does start from scratch?
Well, this is not new. Bolivia did what needs to be done under Morales and his successor, and they performed much better than the rest of Latin America based on the framework they followed, which was not the neoliberal one of following the markets. Of course, markets have a role to play, but fundamentally, the fiscal framework must focus on the macro. And in terms of that, the Reserve Bank and the Treasury have to play a critical role of making sure that the resources in the form of pensions, South Africa is very lucky that it has pensions that are substantive. We should ask the question, why should our Johannesburg Stock Exchange be amongst the top 30? And in those top 30 countries, unemployment, poverty, and inequality is not to the deplorable extent that South Africa suffers. In fact, they don't suffer these kinds of maladies that South Africa suffers. Why should we be part of that club of 30 and be part of no other club that suffers these levels of poverty and inequality? Those are the fundamental questions we must ask, because fundamentally they will reveal these charades that we have been embroiled in, and of course, lazy thinking that then introduces that as a solution, despite the fact that Kisvater, the commissioner, said, I can collect almost 100 billion if you give me 2.5 billion rand. Instead of heeding his call, then the question is, Nilo. I mean, this is lazy thinking. We cannot be subjected to this kind of nonsense any longer. Of no macroeconomic thinking, of no design thinking, of systems design, of scenarios. Go and ask where South Africa should be another 50 years. You'll not find a document that everybody refers to the NDP when they prepare budgets. But it's the most ignored document. It's not a plan, it's not anything. And in the absence of these tools of foresight, of modern tools of foresight, South Africa will be playing marbles, as we see in the last 2 months, where the budget was never read because of nonsensical read.
Oh, Dr. Pali Lehohla, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt you. Our connection to you is deteriorating quite rapidly, so I'm going to try and give it some time, as we do whenever something like this happens, with the hopes that it will restabilize once again, because I think part of what you're saying in some ways can help us really elevate the debate, even in the public, about how we should be approaching what is taking place, especially given the fact that, of course, whilst wrangling over budgets is not new, there are real concerns about what it will do to a country like South Africa, which has a whole lot more of its development that it still needs to go, at least when you compare it to some other countries in the West or global North, where in fact these kind of debates are commonplace. Their economies have developed way further than ours, and so I wonder if we can afford, quite frankly, the wrangling that's taken place at the moment. Dr. Lehohla, I wonder if you still are able to hear us. At the corner of my eye, it seems your frame may have frozen, but the question I was hoping perhaps we could part on is the impact you reckon this has had already, at least insofar as optics are concerned. You started off by mentioning that this has been akin to a circus. Are there already clear warning signs of the impact that this might have? Okay, it seems we've lost Dr. Pali Lehohla. What a pity. Hopefully we can reestablish that connection and continue that discussion. But once again, this matter will be in the High Court in the Western Cape today. My understanding is that Part B is going to be ventilated, and this really has to do with the constitutionality of the VAT Act, which, as it currently stands, allows the Finance Minister to essentially unilaterally decide on how much VAT must increase by and when. The DA and the EFF arguing, of course, that in some ways this can't be, because that power should be vested in Parliament and not necessarily in the executive through the Finance Minister. So as soon as that litigation continues in the High Court, we'll try to bring as much of it as we can here on the agenda.